Yeah, it'd be easier to talk than
Yeah.
record.
Let me grab my phone the time. So Sarah, do you want me to show you this? You
I think if we
basically just hit record and then you
Well, let's
don't have
just
to
do
hold
it.
it down.
Yeah.
You can do like a little test and once you're done you just press record again and
Well, I am so not used to this.
it's like holding.
It sounds.
This takes in the audio, so you hold it like a microphone. That you press.
So we
to
can't
start
just set it
recording.
down and.
I think so.
Try it and see how it sounds. Just do like a little sound test right now.
Let's do it. So it's recording right now, right? So this is how it's operating right now.
So it's just test it, okay?
We're gonna test it.
I think it's okay.
5,
Just-
4, 3, 2, 1. I think it's okay too.
Okay, so now. I think it's okay too.
Yes. Yeah, it's perfect. It's picking up. Yeah, I don't think it needs to be right in our face.
Yeah,
Perfect. So, let me just start my timer. And I'll stand by the door just so it doesn't open.
Yeah, please.
And you know what it looks like on the screen when it's recording? Like
Yeah,
those numbers.
Yeah, those numbers come up.
Okay.
So I'm gonna go ahead and get started. I don't want Andy to be late for the airport. What
Okay.
time are you leaving tonight?
For
today?
I need to leave at the hotel at about 5 p.m.
Oh, okay. I don't want to keep you there either, but that's good. I was worried that maybe you had to leave by 1 or something. I was thinking, oh God, poor Andy. Okay, so let's just get started. I'm gonna just make this, it's just gonna be a free-flowing discussion, but I want you to explain because Americans don't really understand what's happening the way that they need to understand, okay? So I'm just gonna talk to you. Andy, I'm so excited to have you on this podcast today. We're here in South Korea. You came in from Hong Kong to be here at this big event, the KPAC event, and I can't tell you how happy it makes me to know that there are young people like you around the world fighting for democracy, freedom, and liberty, something that I think a lot of us in America take for granted. But let's talk a little bit about who you are. I don't think Americans understand or know what you've been doing, particularly in Hong Kong, and talk a little bit about founding, the National Hong Kong Party and the Hong Kong National Party, what that means to you and what you're up against.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me for the interview. I'm Andy Chen. I'm the founder of Hong Kong National Party, which is the first political party in Hong Kong to advocate independence from China. And we also advocate that we are not Chinese, but Hong Kongers.
You are very brave. You're very brave, Andy, because you're taking on the Chinese government. And that cannot be easy. Tell me a little bit about what happened with your arrest. It was over a month ago, right? When you were not allowed to leave Hong Kong. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Actually, in the past few years, I was suppressed. My party was banned due to the advocacy, and also I was disqualified from running an office in the Legislative Council. I was the first one because of course, advocating independence. And then I was arrested in September, for twice in a month.
Wow. So explain independence to me, what that means to you, what that means to be independent in Hong Kong now, particularly when it relates to China, so that people understand where you're coming from. And then I want to talk a little bit about the oppression and the threats from the communist government. But talk a little bit about independence.
Well, in 2014, everyone knows that there was the Umbrella Revolution, and it also was the awakening of myself. I didn't know any politics and stuff, current affairs. I can't even identify the politician and political parties. But after that, I realized why would we suffer in Hong Kong? Why is there so many problems? Because we don't have democracy. We can't make our own decision. We can't decide our own fate. So at that time, a protest to the Hong Kong government. but then I realized that we are not, the Hong Kong government can't make a decision. It's just a puppet of the communists. So I move on to think the reason behind why can't we achieve democracy is that there is China, there is communists. So I decided that we should end the relationship between Hong Kong and China. We stand on our own, and then we'll have democracy. And besides, we are Hong Kong, and we are not Chinese. We are all equal on the earth, right? You are Chinese, or Japanese, Korean. We are Hong Kongers. So why would we be ruled by other people? Why Chinese rule Hong Kong? Why can't we just decide our own fate?
Well, explain that, because a lot of people don't realize, especially in the United States and even in other parts of the world, what happened to Hong Kong after the British, right? What happened? How did basically Hong Kong come under the umbrella of China?
Actually, there are a lot of difference between Hong Kong people and Chinese people. We speak different language, we have different culture, or say similar culture but different. We have the Western culture and also the Eastern culture, the living style, and we embrace freedom, and we respect people, and we enjoy the capitalism.
That's right, but you enjoyed that, and then China came into the picture, right? And China does not want to let go of Hong Kong. It's a big fight. It's a
Yeah.
big fight, especially for the young people like you who who are advocating for independence and liberty from China.
Yeah, before 1997, we were a colony of the UK, and after 1997, now we are a colony of China. So they are systematically, to cleanse our population, they have been importing Chinese people into Hong Kong. In the past 20 years, there were already 1 million Chinese people. Now the population in Hong Kong is over 7 million people, so there's a huge amount of Chinese population flushed into Hong Kong.
We saw that with Tibet too, when the Chinese did the same thing to the Tibetan people, correct?
Yeah, so we need to stop the colonization, or Hong Kong people will disappear along history.
What do you need to do? What is it, the support that you need? How can you take on the Chinese Communist government? How is this going to be possible?
Well, this is the core question that everyone will ask. Hong Kong is so small. How can you stand up against China? Yes, we're small, but we are not alone. I mean, to survive or to achieve independence or democracy, we have to end the CCP. I mean, when China collapsed, the region surrounding China will be free, like Tibetans, the Uyghurs, Taiwanese, Hong Kong people. Once CCP collapsed or once China collapsed, our freedom will come.
And it's important to build those relationships, right? For the United States to know who those people are, like you in Hong Kong, or people fighting for freedom in Tibet, or who on the Uyghurs side do we communicate with? Do you think the United States, the US State Department, is fully aware of what's going on and connected to the people, or would you like to see more involvement and more connection?
Of course, we should connect because we have the same goal. We want to dissolve China. We want to end this regime. So we have the same goal, but we are just at different region, at different geographic location, but we're fighting the same war. We have the same goal. So in Hong Kong, we protest in the street. The Tibetans, Uyghurs, they protest in their own region. The US, you can do some other things. For example, tariffs, you can fight an economic war, trade war, whatsoever. You have lots of weapons that you can use in the US. So we Hong Kong people, one of our hope is that the US will intervene and help us to use all sorts of weapons. For example, just as I said, the trade wars. And so on and so on.
No, and that makes sense, because that's something that this administration has used, and especially with tariffs, you know? And the trade wars are something that we're seeing well and alive every single day between the US and China, right? When you speak of China, what goes through my head is just how brave you are. Because even in Hong Kong, you're in your homeland. I'm sure that the Chinese government is monitoring you and watching you, and people within the Hong Kong government that are sympathizers to the Chinese government. Talk a little bit about the dangers that you face. I mean, you have to be concerned for your safety and your own life in this fight.
In fact, China, they have no method, they have no ways to deal with the millions of Hong Kong people. What do you do with those Hong Kong people? Are you going to send PLA? Are you going to send a tank to kill us all? No, they can't do that, because Hong Kong is so important to China. China needs Hong Kong more than Hong Kong needs China. And then, so they can't use military. The only method they can use is to create terror, white terror. So they send out tri-society, they ambush activists, politicians, and they arrest people, they beat people up. And for myself, of course, my party was banned, I was barred from the election, and then I encounter physical surveillance. Even my family, even my sister, the boyfriend of my sister, we were all followed and harassed. And then I was ambushed by a child society that hired by CCP.
Wow, so talk about that ambush and about the fact that they're targeting your family. I mean, what does your family say to you? Do they say, keep fighting? Are they concerned? What I'm trying to figure out the methods, the Chinese methods. I want people to understand how horrific the actions of the Chinese government are in Hong Kong.
To be honest, my family, they don't want to step into politics or get involved with these kind of things. However, they were forced to fight back. We have no choice. We don't want to fight, but we have no choice, because if you don't fight against them, they will go after you. So no appeasement should be made with China.
No appeasement.
No appeasement. Look at World War II. Look at, as Winston Churchill said, Britain and France, they have to choose between dishonor and war. They chose dishonor. They will have war. So we chose dishonor, we trust the communists, we get into so-called one country, two system, and the result is that it's a total failure. We shouldn't trust them. And now we are paying the price of trusting them with blood.
Right. Paying with blood.
Yeah, paying with blood.
And now we're seeing
the blood of the young people.
Right, yes, exactly. And I think, like, for so many Americans, and I talk, you know, from hearing young people that, I mean, we take these things for granted, right? You don't, like you said, before 2014, you didn't really know what the parties were, who the political players were,
Yeah.
but then your life was under the threat of that freedom being taken from you, pushed you into action. And I think the same thing happens all over the world, where people become complacent. They don't really see what's happening around them until it's almost gone, right?
Yeah, because history repeats itself. That's why Thomas Jefferson said that the Tree of Liberty must be refreshed from time to time, but blood of tyrants and patriots. Why is it from time to time? Because people will forget. Because the new generation will take everything for granted. They forgot what happened before, and they didn't know. They don't know why is it so important to have democracy. Why is it so important to fight for that? Once they lose democracy, once they lose freedom, they experience socialism, experience the threat from communists. They realize, like we, and then they will fight. So. I can't say is the fault, is this wrong of, I can't say the young generation in the US, they're wrong, but they are just haven't experienced the terror and the consequences
the consequences of socialism and communism. We're both here in South Korea, and we know that, especially for young South Korean conservatives, people who are very independent-minded, believe in liberty and democracy, they're also struggling a similar fight here, a similar battle from within their own nation, where they feel that history has been distorted, where the truth, even in their universities, has been distorted, so that the young people really don't understand the fight that their grandparents went through for freedom and democracy. And they're afraid now, some of these people that are aware of what's going on, they're afraid that the rug will be pulled out from under them, and somehow the left will win, or the communists will win, because they're so desperate for unification with the North that they're willing to give up some of those freedoms. Now, some of those people, I think that's what you're talking about. Tell me about the importance of connecting with like-minded activists here in South Korea and what that means for you.
As I just said, we are fighting for the same goal. We are fighting to end communism. This is 21st century. In the past, if we look into the history, we know that how communists kill people, how they destroy a country, a nation, destroy cultures.
But they promise so much.
Yeah,
They promise a lie, so it's a propaganda campaign, right? Why do young people believe that? Why do they fall for it? Why do you think? What have you seen in Hong Kong? Maybe if somebody says, oh, Andy, don't do this. You know, it's no big deal, we're gonna be fine. Does anyone ever say that to you? Are there people that believe the communists are gonna make it better?
I think it's our older generation did that. Our grandparents, most of our grandparents, they fled from China to Hong Kong. They escaped communism to Hong Kong. But our parents, the generation of our parents, they forgot that. So now we are the third generation. We have to bear the consequences of trusting communists. Now we need to fight against communism because of our older generation. So it happens everywhere, like in Taiwan and in Korea, in Hong Kong. People just forget what happened back in 50 years ago.
It happens in the United States too, and we see that. We've seen what's been happening in the US, and we've seen the rise like we've never seen before of socialism and communist ideals inside the United States like we've never really seen before. And I think it's really surprising to us.
So what happened in Hong Kong is a little bit advanced than other regions. So we, as a Hong Konger, we need to let other places know, like in Taiwan, in South Korea, we're a step ahead of you. Because, I mean, it's a progress, not we are better than you, just because of the history, move a step forward in Hong Kong.
Right.
What the history will repeat. So what happened in Hong Kong will happen in Taiwan, will happen in Korea, and then in Japan and the US. So before that happened, I want to let you know.
You're sending out a warning.
Yeah, don't wait until the bad things really happen.
I think that's an incredible warning, and I hope our listeners are really taking heed of what Andy is warning us about, because before you know it, that idea, that ideology seeps itself into the system and then takes over an entire nation. And before you know it, you're up against a monster that becomes more and more difficult to fight. Something that you can't just erase without the blood, you know, that is shed in that fight for liberty and freedom. Before I let you go, Andy, I want our listeners to understand what happened to you. And we just kind of glossed over it, but when you attempted to leave Hong Kong to go to Japan to speak at CPAC in Japan CPAC, tell me in your own words, what was it like when you got to the airport and what happened to you?
When I tried to depart at Hong Kong airport, I was stopped by the immigration and then arrested by the police for rioting. Actually, the Hong Kong government or Chinese government, they tried to bar me from leaving Hong Kong to speak because they don't want me to go to Taiwan or Korea or the US to speak to people to spread the message of don't trust communists. So Nazi China, they're infiltrating everywhere in the world, infiltrating Hong Kong, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and also in Australia, even the Western world, they bribe the politicians, they create fake news, they have proxy there, and they set up the CSSA, which is the Chinese Scholar and Student Association, which is controlled directly and sponsored directly by Chinese embassy. They organize the Chinese students there to protest, to suppress the freedom of speech. Now you see a lot of examples.
Right.
They're beating up people, and they steal intelligence, they steal the technology through the students. So I have some requests, I just propose you should be aware of this kind of infiltration. Just ban those spying organizations.
Did you hear that, readers and listeners? Ban those organizations is what Andy Chan is saying from the United States, from the Western world, because the Chinese government is utilizing students and utilizing these types of organizations that are set up to look like activist groups or technology groups or education groups, but really what they're using them for is for spying and for spreading
Stealing.
propaganda and stealing. Right, you're right, stealing our technology, stealing our intellectual
And
property.
they utilize your sympathy for Chinese people. You want to let the Chinese student come in to learn your culture, learn democracy, and bring it back to China, right? But the majority of Chinese people, they support a Chinese empire. So it's in their blood, in their mind. So when they travel overseas to learn, to study, the purpose is to build a Chinese empire. So the Chinese diaspora, even though they're living in Australia or Canada for 10 years, they still have a Chinese heart. They still consider they're Chinese people. They have a mission of building a Chinese empire which rule the world.
And that's the truth. Whether our listeners understand this or not, because you can't think now as an American. You have to think like if you're Chinese.
Their historical perspective is
That's
that
right.
China is always the center of the world, always centered. The name of China now is 中国, is the middle kingdom, is center. It just means center. So they always think that they are the center of the world. They're the empire. They need to expand.
And now, you're here, you've only been allowed by the Hong Kong government to be here for one day. You have to fly back tonight.
Yeah. And before 12 o'clock, I need to go back to my home because I'm now on curfew.
He's now on curfew, so this is like probation in Hong Kong for Andy Chan. He was allowed only out for one day. He has to fly back tonight. I can't tell you how sad I am that he does have to fly back tonight, because I would love to spend more time with you. I can't even begin to tell
May
you.
I say one more thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I want you
I
to.
want to ask the US to sanction Hong Kong. Not just sanction China, but sanction Hong Kong. The consent that we Hong Kong people, or especially the young people, we have. We want to destroy the economy in Hong Kong. And then it will start a chain reaction to destroy the economy of China. You know what? They're undergoing economic crisis, political crisis there. Once we trigger those economic crises, then it will collapse.
And the young people that support this quest for freedom and democracy support those sanctions.
Because we know that freedom is not free. We either pay in blood or we pay in money. So just why don't we pay in money? The U.S. Congress has a 1992 Hong Kong Policy Act. It gives Hong Kong a special status which is different from China. So when you sanction China, it is not necessarily sanction on Hong Kong. So China used Hong Kong as a backdoor to import those banned technology into China. They steal.
So they're
it's a
basically, they
backdoor.
steal the technology, they move it, or even other products.
They pretend they are a Hong Kong company. They pretend they are Hong Kong people.
And then they just move it through Hong Kong and up to China.
Yes, and moreover, over 70% of foreign direct investment goes through Hong Kong into China. So imagine, what if they lose Hong Kong? And then, very important for the rich people, for presidency, Secretary C, should be Secretary C, the CCP, they need Hong Kong to transfer the property from RMB to Hong Kong dollars and then US dollars to overseas. So Hong Kong is so important to them. We understand that and we're willing to pay the price, so please sanction Hong Kong.
This is such an important message, and I promise you that I'm going to deliver this message to the United States, and hopefully this administration will hear
Thank you.
your calls for freedom and democracy in Hong Kong, and I can't thank you enough, Andy. I'm on your side, and I will have you on my show anytime, and I will speak for you and the people of Hong Kong, and together we're going to find a way to fight the dragon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Americans.
Thank you. Thank you.
Got it?
Yeah, how'd you like it? I think it was
Someone
great.
was talking on top.
Are we re-recording?
I don't know.